Aloha and welcome to the informational briefing of the Senate Special Accountability Committee on Procurement. Today is Wednesday, August 18th at 1 p.m. We focus on the procurement and contracting procedures of the Department of Health. I'm Sharon Moriwaki, chair of this special committee, and joining me are Senators Kim and Favela, and we also have presenters joining us on remote, as is the interim state procurement officer, Bonnie Kahakui, whom we asked to join us as we seek to improve our procurement policies and procedures. First, a few housekeeping announcements. This briefing is being streamed live on YouTube. You can find links to the briefings and presentation documents on the live and on-demand video page of the Capitol website under the Special Committee on Procurement webpage. This committee's charge is to improve the state procurement and contracting policies and procedures. The focus, how we better serve the public by procuring goods, services, and construction more quickly through clear, fair, and consistent standards. We built on the work of the Government Operations Committee from last session that looked at how we streamline our process and make it fair, and also looking at performance evaluation of contractors. So today we have Health Director Elizabeth Char and her team to brief us on their procurement and bid protest procedures, their procurement staffing and training, and the challenges and suggested recommendations for addressing them. Director Char, are you on? Aloha. Aloha.
Hi. Good afternoon, Senators.
Could you first introduce the team that's with you and then proceed?
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity to provide this briefing. We have the Deputy Directors of Health, Kathy Ross, Danny Wong Tomiyasu, Kathy Ho, and Marian Suji. And we have our Administrative Services Officer, Office Chief, and that's Janice Morita, and she will be doing the PowerPoint presentation for today.
Thank you. Aloha, Janice, proceed.
So if I could just give some opening remarks.
Oh, you will, okay, yes, okay, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the Department of Health has about 3,000 employees, and we're often referred to as the Department of Everything. We're very proud of our diverse workforce who have various procurement responsibilities that allow our department to provide necessary services to community and clients. A driving factor for a decentralized procurement process is that subject matter experts need to identify what goods or services are needed and develop a detailed enough scope of work for bidders to properly respond. So with that, I'd like to ask Janice Morita to please go over the PowerPoint presentation that's been prepared for you. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, Senator Moriwaki and the Senate Committee on Procurement. Let me share my screen right now. Can everybody see the screen?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. This is just a short PowerPoint slide to go over some of the items that you folks had requested for this presentation. So before we go into our process, we kind of like to give you a little bit of a background of our makeup of the Department of Health. First off, some background information. As far as our departmental structure, we have 4 administrations. General administration, which includes some of the attached agencies like the Executive Office on Aging and Office of Language Access. We have our Behavioral Health Administration, which includes adult mental health as well as child adolescent mental health. We have Health Resources Administration, where a lot of the COVID-19 activity is taking place because we have our Disease Outbreak Control Division in this administration. And then our Environmental Health Administration, which does a lot of the water quality as well as some of the air quality as well as food and drug. So those are the 4 administrations within our Department of Health. We have 24 program IDs, As far as positions, we have close to about 2,700 permanent FTE, of which about 2,200 are G-funded. We have 417 temporary FTE, which about 118 are general funded. Our total budget for this fiscal year for the Department of Health is about $1 billion, of which 429 million is in G funds. This is our organizational chart of the Department of Health. So as you can see, there's a 24 program ID. I do want to note that the Office of Environmental Quality Control, which you see at the top, which was an attached agency, has been moved over to the Department of Business and Economic Development and Tourism. And so as of July 1st, they're with that agency. For the procurement at the Department of Health, we have what we would consider a central office, which is housed in the Administrative Services Office. We have 6 full-time general funded employees, as you can see there. We have a supervisor for CAPS, her name is Naomi Chinen, who's with me actually in the room right now. We have a contract specialist, Christine Ramel. We have 2 procurement and supply specialists, Luno Santos and Scott Isokani. And then we have a purchasing technician, Doname Katsura, as well as a contracts assistant, Curtis Tanabe. We also have 2 89-day emergency hires within this office. Some of the services that we provide to the Department of Health, we ensure that all of the procurement and contracting activities are in accordance with applicable procurement rules and regulations. We evaluate departmental requirements for the acquisition of goods, services, and construction. We also effect contracts for professional and other specialized services. We've also processed sole source and emergency procurements, small purchase and purchases exempt from competitive solicitation and their standard procurement requirements. We also assist in the development of contract terms and provisions. Because we're so big, we do have a decentralized model of procurement, and so our office here, helps to monitor and keep track of all of the activities that are done at the program level. We also provide guidance in the administration of purchase orders and contracts issued. We do the inventory for the Department of Health, as well as P-card administration, the Amazon business administration, and the payment of monitoring of departmental leases. As I mentioned previously, the procurement functions at the Department of Health are decentralized, and so the procurement delegation is given to individuals within a DOH program that perform procurement activities. We currently have about 474 staff in the Department of Health that have procurement delegation. So the process involved in getting procurement delegation, once an individual is designated as an individual who needs procurement delegation, we make sure that they are aware of the online classes that they need to take, and basically make sure that they take those classes and become certified prior to starting any type of procurement activity. We do keep an updated list of staff that have procurement delegation. This list is pretty much updated on a monthly basis. We also have an intranet site within the Department of Health that has all of the listings of all of the individuals and the specific procurement delegations that they have. These are some of the types of delegation that our staff here at DOH have. So as you can see, it's quite a comprehensive list. Some of our individuals who have procurement delegation may have one or more of these types of delegation. This is some of the information regarding the volume of documents that come into the Department of Health. For fiscal years 19 through 21, as you can see here, fiscal year 19, we processed about 11,496 purchase orders, 221 contracts, 602 contract modifications, and 6 loans. For fiscal year 20, 10,597 purchase orders, 175 contracts, 619 contract modifications, and 4 loans. And then for fiscal year 21, 7,834 purchase orders, 123 contracts, 754 contract modifications, and 6 loans. This is, so now into the process. Basically, because our DOH, the procurement process is decentralized, each program conducts its own solicitation and selects vendors to be able to procure their goods and services. All of the documents are submitted for review to our ASO CAPS office and are forwarded for final approvals. We do have a policy and procedure website, which you do see a screenshot here, and that is provided to the programs. It's reviewed for completeness and to make sure that it's updated, and it is available on our website. This is kind of like a high-level view of the procurement process for goods and services. It starts off with the DOH program. They basically indicate that they need or request a type of good or service that they need to be procured. That program also puts together the specifications. They determine the type of solicitation that they're going to conduct for the procurement. Basically, they get the responses from their solicitations and they select the vendor. The award is made to the vendor, and then the procurement documents are prepared. As you can see, if a contract is required, we do have an in-house contract genie system. What this does is that it's an electronic system where an individual can go on and create a contract. It's similar to similar to TurboTax, where you input the information and basically a contract is developed based on that information that you provide. Once that contract is developed, it's sent for review, and then a purchase order or a C-41 is issued. If no contract is required, then it goes straight to our PO web system. Again, we have an in-house electronic PO web system so that all of the documents go through that portal and are also electronically approved through that portal. Some of the processing times, from the time a contract is developed to its execution, it is roughly about 25 to 40 business days. For the initiation and to encumbrance of a purchase order, it's about 7 to 10 business days. One of the things that we did back in November of 2015 was we went through what they call a Kaizen exercise. We examined our procurement process and took a look at what our process was and some of the issues that came up as a result of certain processes that we had in place. One of the things that we found out was the fact that there was a lot of back and forth and shuffling of documents. The exercise, we found many duplicate verification checks and quality checks that really didn't add too much value to the process. At that time, when we looked at the time it took to process these documents, it took close to 67 to 82 business days for a contract and about 20 to 22 business days for a purchase order. And again, these processing times were basically dependent on how fast the programs could make changes and and resubmit their documents. Some of the outcomes of our Kaizen exercise, again, we eliminated some of the touch points that did not add a lot of value to the contract review or the purchase order process. For example, in our contract process, every time that a review and an edit was done, it always came back to our ASO office. And then we would check it, and then again, it would go back for review, and then this could go on for, this back and forth could go on about, more than 4 or 5 times. Each time that this back and forth occurred, it added approximately 4 to 5 days to that process. And so basically, that was one of the things that we found out in this Kaizen exercise. For the purchase order process, again, it was the purchase orders were still hard copy. The hard copies were going back and forth. Sometimes those hard copies would get lost in transit, and oftentimes it took an additional 7 to 10 days to actually process those purchase orders. So that was pretty much, what we did with the Kaizen exercise. We actually implemented some of these processes. As I mentioned previously, we do have 2 electronic systems within DOH. One is what we call our contract genie for the development of contracts. And then the other one is the purchase order web, which you can go in and input your purchase orders. As far as for bid protest procedures, we do follow the process that in place for 103D goods and services per the SPO guidelines. So, basically this is kind of the outline as to how, what the process is for the bid protest. As you know, for the Department of Health, we not only have 103D goods and services, but we also have 103F, which is Health and Human Services. So there is a separate process for the bid protest, and this is what you see here. Again, we do follow the guidelines and procedures that are prescribed in the SBO website.
So Janice, I'm going to stop you there because we really are interested in your procedures and what you do in contracting. So if we could stop there before you go into challenges, I guess that's the next part of your presentation.
After the bid protest,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Sure.
So members, questions on the procedures or processes? Senator Kim?
Since you just talked about it, so how much time have you cut off by going through the Kaizen exercises?
We pretty much cut a lot of the processing times almost in half. If you notice on the previous slide that I had shown, basically, the initial contract processing was basically 67 to 82 business days, and we were able to cut that down to 25 to 40 business days. And then for the purchase order processing, we were able to cut it down from 20 to 22 business days down to 7 to 10 business days.
Okay. So now, are you folks, do you have certain dollar thresholds before you have to go to a full-on procurement versus a sole source or whatever other process you use?
We do follow the small purchase thresholds, which is for goods and services 100,000 for goods and services and 250,000 for construction. So we do follow those. Thresholds that are prescribed per SPO guidelines.
Okay. And what is your policy as far as when you award a contract and the contracts exceed the award amount? For example, you have one here, Helping Hands. It was for $51,000, the award amount, but the final cost of the project was $1.9 million. And that then, should have triggered the small purchase, I guess, right? Because it was 50.
What page is that on, Senator Kim?
Well, your pages aren't numbered, but I believe
the
it's
numbers on this side.
the third page. Oh, number 61 of
Yeah.
the Excel sheet line 61.
Okay.
Helping Hands.
Okay. So it went from 51 to 1.9.
Right.
Correct. I will check for you, but a lot of these, this is a 103F contract and Health and Human Services. So for a lot of these contracts, we do have options to extend. For most of the contracts that we have, we make sure as much as possible that they are not changing the scope of the project. And so I can check to see what those increases were, if they were just dollar amounts, period of performance, but I can get back to you on that.
Yeah, so in that case too, if it doesn't hit the threshold, but then the extension pushes over the threshold, then
Right.
what kind of
Right.
process?
And again, this is for 103F contracts.
Right.
So basically, these contracts, we do have an agreement where for these types of contracts, if they are, if it reaches the million and above threshold, actually our head of a purchasing agency, or Dr. Libby Char, she does have authority to sign off on those. So we do, again, the requirements for the 103F are slightly different than 103D.
So in the case of 103D, what's the difference?
Yes, for 103F, it's the Health and Human Services. So this is for like our purchase of services.
Right.
And so this is for like, either social services or providing
Right.
services to our clients for
Okay.
inpatient services. Yeah.
And 103D?
103 are primarily just your regular goods and services that, don't fall into that, the purchase of service area.
Okay, so on line 403, University of Hawaii, it went from 812,000 to 4.6 million.
Okay.
How are you folks so off onto your contracts? I mean, I'm gonna name a whole bunch of them that I found.
Okay. Sometimes we have, they may involve multiple awards within that contract. So again, I can go back and I can check on these contracts that you're questioning to take a look and see exactly what happened insofar as the increase in costs. So I will get back to you on those. Do you have others that you would like us to follow up on?
Yeah, so if you turn to, especially the ones on this recycling. The recycling is huge. I mean, on line 480,
What line?
483, it
483.
went from 1.6 million to 10 million. 1.5 to 7.6 million. 550,000 to 1.8 million. On line 503, it went from 13 million to 45 million.
A lot of those.
On 504, it went from 13 million to 58 million. And on 506, it went from 825,000 to 4.9 million. Now, I know they're redemption centers, but how can you be so far off?
Yeah, basically, these were, what we did was, for a lot of these contracts that you mentioned, these are rate structured contracts. They're not exactly, we don't input an exact dollar amount. And so basically what we do is, as the contract goes by, we do issue contract amounts. And so basically, these are what we consider rate structure type contracts. And so they don't have a specific initial dollar amount.
Is there a policy on how you handle these differently?
Right, we do have a lot of, we do have some contracts that are rate structure. So some of our 103F ones do have rate structure. What we tried to do here in this contract list was that, initially when we had prepared this list, a lot of these contracts were rate structure. And so we tried to incorporate the dollar amount that we've spent on those rate structure type contracts.
But again, I mean, you still didn't explain how you can be so far off. I mean, isn't there some kind of projection that you do, or? I don't know how you budget and how you do this if your award amounts are so far off from what the actual cost is.
For the redemption centers, those are based on, those are special funded. And so those are based on those revenues that we get from, every time you go and purchase a can of soda or a bottle of water. And so basically those are, those are where the revenues come in from every year. And so based on that, those are where the monies come from for those purchases.
I understand, but again, we're talking about procurement. We're talking about, award amounts and so forth. And so it just seems as though, I don't know.
Also too, these are exempt from procurement.
But still.
These redemption centers, yes.
But still, I mean, I don't understand why you would have an amount so small as far as the award, and then the amount so large. I mean, somebody's going to have to explain that. So I'll go off.
Thank you. We will follow up questions to the department that we'd like to have answered following this briefing. I guess just to follow on to what Senator Kim is saying, there must be some criteria when you go out to bid to these vendors who are doing your redemption, and what is the scope of work and how much was it for? If it's a small amount, every year there should be some review, and who does the reviewing and who is responsible for those contracts?
Okay. Yeah, and so basically the deposit beverage program that takes care of that. It's housed in the Environmental Health Administration. Again, if you could submit, send the questions that you have, and we can provide responses to that.
So, the procurement officer in charge would be the deputy director of that division, or is there a program that's in charge? Because you have so many, as you said, you have over 400
Right.
procurement
So-
officers. Who's in charge of that to review it?
Right. So the program, the person responsible for the solid and hazardous waste program, that individual is the one who's the procurement officer for that, for those contracts.
Okay, so we would like to have information on that and the person in charge as for
Okay, great.
follow-up.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll provide that. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Senator Kim, Senator Kidani?
Oh, no, of course, the ones for UH, just make sure, because it's different from the
Okay, it's different. Okay,
redemption,
Senator Kidani first.
So can you explain what you mean by a rate structure procurement contract?
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna have Naomi Chinen. She's our supervisor cap. She will explain to you what the rate structure schedule is.
Good afternoon, Senators. Rate schedule contracts, we have usually two different
So
types.
Naomi, excuse me, can you get closer to the mic? We're having a hard time
I'm
hearing.
sorry.
Thank you. No, thank you.
We have generally two different types of contracts. Some of them are budget-based, in which over a set amount of time, they are budgeted X amount of dollars. A lot of our health and human service contracts are based on an hourly rate. For example, we have contract with audiologists, and they charge an hourly rate. We also have case managers, and we pay them on an hourly rate. So when they bill the Department of Health, when we go out for bid, they are selected, based on the quote they provide per an hour of service. And so many of our contracts are based on the type of service they provide per an hour.
So on the recycling contract, you said it was a rate structured contract. So how does that work? Because they pay for, I don't know, 5 cents a bottle or can or whatever it is. And where do those funds go?
The funds go into a special fund. And I believe there is a small administrative fee and a 5 cents charge. The 5 cents charge is given back to the person who redeems the cans. And so every time customers bring their cans back to a recycling center, within the large amount that you see is the refund that the vendor needs to give the customer back. There's also a small, I believe it's a percentage, that they give back to the vendor for administrative fees. So every year, the solid hazardous waste, when they extend the contract, and a lot of these contracts do run for 6 years because they are exempt from the 103D procurement. So basically, we have vendors on by geographic area and by island, and we have recycle centers to encourage the public to redeem their bottles, cans, at convenient locations. But the rate is set by the solid hazardous waste, And I believe it's also based on the percentage of cans being recycled.
And so, what do they do with the recycled cans and bottles?
You know, I understand that they're weighed, they are packaged, and they are shipped to a certified recycle center, I believe on the mainland, United States, or overseas.
So does that cost us money, or do we get money for the recycled stuff that we're sending?
I understand they sell it, yeah.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that there's value in recycled products. That's why we recycle also. So
Yes.
do we end up paying more for shipping than we make in the recycled product?
That I will have to double check on all the
We're
figures
losing
with
money
Yeah, I
the
know.
program.
Yeah, that's what I want the public
Yeah,
to know.
yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
I think it's been audited and we've been losing money on it.
and is it something, you know, I think what we would like to know is what is it costing us to recycle, you know, and because we have to send it away to do it, how much more are we paying now than we did before?
Okay, yes, we will get back to the committee.
Thank you.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Senator Kim?
Okay, follow-up. So how do you folks arrive at the initial award amount? Okay, let's just take, for instance, this recycling. You kind of have an idea how much people are buying cans and what the percentage of return might be. So we've been doing this for many years now. So how can in 2018 you be so off on the award amount? How did you arrive even at the award amount?
The initial award amount, you know, I believe you're saying the first one is like, I believe 1.3 million, but the final amount is over a 6-year period. So if you multiply 1.3 times the 6 years, that's why we're coming out with something, I think, a little over $8 million. But this contract is not a yearly amount. It's actually probably in the spreadsheet. What it is the total contract amount over the years.
So the award amount is for 1 year,
Yes.
and the final cost is over the whole period of time?
Yes.
Okay, see, you guys don't spell that out, so it's not clear to us. When you give us numbers and spreadsheets, but you guys don't explain it, you leave a lot of questions as to.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I think we'll try to get more clear next time. But a lot of these rate schedules, the contracts go for up to 6 years. So it's the initial period plus all the years that have gone by.
Okay, so 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. Okay, so in the case of the Monster Tires, which is redemption refunding for deposit beverage, the award amount was $600,000. It's now 6 million, and it's line 491. But 18 to 22, 18, 19, 22, that's just 5 years. 5 times 600,000 doesn't come up to 6 million.
We can ask the program for detailed reports.
Does somebody
why-
monitor these things? The procurement officers monitor these things? And because it seems to be, based on what you guys giving us, a standard practice of being under awarded and the final cost is hugely over. And it's not just for the redemption centers, like I see UH here, I see some others.
Yeah, Senator, we can get back to you on the exact details of why it went from 600,000 to 6 million.
Okay, well, I kind of want to, and I kind of want a general answer as well. I mean, what's the policy they're following? You know what I'm saying? It's not just a matter of giving us an answer, but how do we resolve some of these discrepancies?
basically most of these redemption center contracts are based on the invoice, the amount of cans being recycled.
Yes,
So
but
we
the
start
question
at-
is your award amount is so far off what is actually being paid. That's my concern. Not so much as, you know, how much we're paying them, but how are you guys coming up with these awards, with these procurement numbers?
Yeah, we will have to check with the program and get back to you.
Okay, so it's like the hourly. So if I'm a psychiatrist or whatever you hire my services, and I'd say I'm charging $100 an hour, and you say, fine, we're gonna give you 1,000 hours. Okay, but at the end of the period, I'm charging 5,000 hours. What happens in that case?
Many of our contracts, Senator, have a not to exceed amount. So it is up to the program managers to also verify, and providers cannot exceed an amount negotiated in their contracts.
Okay, so you're not showing us the numbers that is negotiated in the contract. You're just showing us the award amount? I would think that that's the negotiated amount, right?
I believe these are the only issue. Yeah.
Award amount,
Yeah, these are all the award amounts.
and then the cumulative
And
amount.
then the cumulative amount is being shown. In column D is the award amount, in column E is the cumulative amount. And it's hard to tell because it's various, budget periods or budget years. So we would have to actually go back to the contract and the program to find out why there's what year, why each year, or what the actual invoices were and services provided to come up with the final cost.
Okay. Because, I see on line 344, Kapiolani Medical Center for Women and Children, award amount was $502,000, and the final cost was $501,000, which is fine. But then the very next line, it's contract amount for $380,000, but then it's $1.1 million. And yes, it's for several years. Okay, you guys have just a lot to explain.
And we will work with the deputy directors on all of these.
Okay, thank you.
Another question.
Thank you.
Follow-up question.
Okay, follow-up question from Senator Kidani.
So on the recycling, how do you verify what the recycling centers take in and what they give to the recyclers? I mean, I don't know if it's a separate entity or they're the same company. How do you verify what's taken in?
I'm sorry, Senator Kidani, they submit a report, a recycling report to the beverage container program. And based on the report and the actual weight of the cans that were submitted, then the program makes payment to the vendor.
That correct. But I'm asking, how is that verified? Do you guys ever do any checks?
Yes, we are in the process of developing a process to be able to do the checks. Yeah, I understand that, I believe that you folks are aware that, yes, we do need to do some auditing of those reports. So we are in the process of doing that right now.
Thank you.
If I can just say one last thing. So, in comparing your numbers, I see many multiple year contracts, but the award amount and the final cost amount is the same. Like on the last one for Waikiki Community Center. Award amount was $300,000, final cost $300,000, yet the project time was from 2019 to 2022. So it just seems in some cases, the award amount is what the final amount, doesn't matter if it's multiple years. But in many other cases, that's not the case. So I don't know if you're inconsistent as to how you're reporting the numbers to us, or something is just wrong with the way the award decisions are being made. You follow what
Yeah,
I'm saying? You follow what I'm saying?
Yes. yes.
Okay.
We'll work with the deputy directors on, clarifying these.
I think to underscore what Senator Kim is asking is for the policy. What are your criteria? Because you've got multi-year contracts. Some are staying within budget that you've appropriated. Others are going far in increase. So is anybody, and maybe your deputies can send us the policy that their divisions use, but that you're actually assessing these programs and looking at what is budgeted, and so it's done a lot more consistently across the department. So if you can look at that, the policy as well as procedures on how you assess these multi-year contracts, because they can go on forever. Some of these seem to go on for a long time, and you've got a lot of extensions. So who looks at that, and how do you determine whether to continue the contract or not? And some of these, I don't know how you appropriate accordingly as well.
Yes, we will work with the deputy directors, providing you with an answer.
Thank you. And I want to go back because you said some of these are 103Fs, and so therefore you're exempt and from procurement, which even if you're exempt from procurement, you really should be following the law to the degree that you can. It's just not giving a free buy to do whatever.
Yeah, no, yeah, we understand that. Yeah, it's not
Okay.
a free buy, but there are certain policies in place for the 103F. Yes.
Okay,
Yes, we
so,
understand.
and if you do have some criteria that's used consistently across your department on how you do follow the procurement law for 103F, that would be very helpful for us to receive as well.
Okay. Yes, we will provide that to you.
Thank you. I want to go back to,
Just want to follow up on one
okay.
one point. So
Senator
Senator Kidani asked you about the monitoring, and you mentioned that you guys are developing a process.
Correct.
So all these years, nobody was monitoring?
I guess not.
Yes, what had happened was that every we have been audited for for the deposit beverage, and so basically because the manager for that program had changed hands, we never finished developing our process for auditing or reporting. And so right now, the individual who is in charge, we're developing the procedures for auditing the individual redemption center reports.
So when did that manager leave?
I believe that manager left back in I believe it was 2019.
So ever since the program got started, there's been no monitoring over this.
There's been limited monitoring of the redemption centers.
So what's your timetable in actually developing a monitoring program?
I will need to get back to you because that was one of the items that we needed to provide a response to in the audit. So we will get that information to you.
When was the audit done?
I will need to check. I will need to verify the date that the audit took place.
A general idea. Last year? 10
No,
years
I
ago?
believe it was either in 2018 or 2019. Again, I'll check to make sure.
And you still didn't respond to them. That's kind of long.
We did provide responses, and then basically we need to continue to, the auditor's office does check to see that we've, our progress on the corrective actions.
2018.
2018? When?
2018.
Okay.
But you don't have a timetable of when you're gonna actually have a program in place.
I would need to check with the program, and we can get back to you on that information.
Okay. And because are they going to require positions for monitoring, or
April?
is this all with the existing staff?
Again, I would need to check what resources may be needed if they need to do the additional monitoring.
No. not additional, that you're saying it's never been done, right?
Correct, or, yeah, right.
To do
So
the
I mean, you
monitoring.
have to have existing monitoring to have additional.
Okay, well, we might ask for new. Yeah, we'll follow up on that. Senator.
Okay.
Can I follow up on?
Yes, Senator Kim.
So in March of 2018.
18.
the-
18 or 19?
2019. Okay, so the audit was done March of 2019, and the manager left when in 2019, right after the audit?
Because of the audit?
I believe he left right in the midst of the audit, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, so you knew he was gone, the audit comes out in 2019, and nobody was assigned to do that? Because he's already gone, so you can't blame that he left in the middle, I mean, starting it. So nobody started it in 2019, 2020, 2021?
Again, I'll have to work with the deputy director to find out what the particulars are of the, of this situation that you're talking about, and we will get back to you.
I'm going to go back to a specific. You said that 103F, you have all these exemptions, but 103D is pretty specific. They have requirements, and it's the lowest bid and so forth. I see in 405, biotech medical software, again, it's $49,000, which is a small purchase, small contract, and it burgeons to $887,000, which is over the $100,000 limit, and it goes from April 2016, has 5 extensions to June 2021. Can you explain that, and what are the criteria, and who's in charge of that contract, which division, and who's the procurement officer?
She gotta get back to you.
Naomi will provide information.
So can you follow up on that? Because again, we're not looking at specific projects, but the specific project gives you an example of the concern of having criteria and following them and following procurement law, and how do we correct these kinds of problems?
Yes, Senator, we will follow up.
Who put this list together?
Our department put it together. All of the different divisions provided the information to us, and we consolidated it for submission.
And who oversaw it and made the decision to send it to us? Somebody must have reviewed it before you sent it to us, right?
Right. So the deputies and the director had reviewed it for submission.
Okay. And nobody looked at it and saw some of these red flags that we might be questioning? I guess the answer is no. Okay, thank you.
So in regard to this listing, I also have questions because when we asked you for the type of contract, it's not clear when you say 103D or 103F or 42F. We're asking for whether it's an IBD, whether it's a RFP, whether it's RFQ, whether it's a sole source, and we didn't get that information on these contracts. And also, when they are multi-year contracts, that should be indicated on the front end rather than these are extensions, because some of these extensions are, 5, 10 extensions. So are they extensions or are they a multi-year contract? So can you provide further information on these sheets, the ones that you gave us? And tell us what kind of contracts.
I'm sorry?
And tell us what kind of contracts they are and actual years that you had. Is it if it's a multi-year contract, is it exempted and because of X justification? Because we really would like to see you have flexibility, but not exemption from the law. And again, looking at how can you be consistent with 400 procurement officers. And I just looked at your slide 8 that shows that in fiscal year 19, you had 10 to 11,000 contracts. And you had over 600 modifications in 2020, 619, 2019, 602, and just this year, I don't know if it's a completed year, 754. Those in the 103D lingo would be called change orders. So, we'd like to know what is a criterion or criteria that you use to be able to modify these contracts. And there are many, so I'd like to see these contracts where you do have modifications, who's in charge and who's approving these modifications.
Okay.
Thank
We
you.
can provide that, yes.
Thank you. Senator Kim.
Okay, just to add to that, so on line 416, Community Ties of America, $4 million award amount. Final cost is 7.9, almost double. The project period time is 7/1/17 to 6/30/23. So how can you project 2020 up to 2023 that it's going to be 7.9 when you thought it was going to be 4 million? And it's to perform licensing, certification, monitoring of community care foster homes. Or there was one extension, but I'm saying is we're not even close to 2023 yet, and you've got the final up until 2021, but it's multi-year. So what happens from 2022 to 2023?
For this particular contract, there are set amounts per year. So it goes out to 2023. So the final cost of the project, basically that's the set amount for those years.
But you awarded it at 4 million as a set amount.
No, that's the particular award amount because you wanted it's for a particular period award amount up to a certain date, and so basically the final cost of the project for this particular one, that's going to be the total cost of the project through 2023. So I believe Senator Mariwaki wants us to break it out, so we can do that for the listing.
Yeah, it just boggles my mind that you can predict it and be on the money up until 2023, yet when you do the award amount to begin with, you're so far off. Do you know what I'm saying? Yet you say, oh, but it's multi-year, but the multi-year then is not necessarily in a factor. If you can tell me 2 years in advance it's going to be 7.9 million, yet 2 years before that you told me it was only going to be 4 million.
The award amount is the amount up to this point, and so the 7.9 is for the entire project period. So the award amount is how much we've what's up to date. The out years basically come up to the 7.9.
No, but so shouldn't that be the award amount, the 7.9, if that's what the contract is for? Why would it be only half of that?
Well, I guess what we interpreted the award amount to be is what we have at this point, and then the final cost of the project would be the cumulative amount.
Okay.
So in this particular case, our award amount is what we have up to date, which is the 4 million, and the final cost of the project, which goes to 2023, is the full amount.
Okay, I understand.
I think there might be some confusion as to what you folks would want as award amount versus the final cost of the project.
Okay, I think
if we could get clarification, and then we can actually go in and fix.
I think what we thought we were getting is the procurement amount. What's the award for the procurement? So I am Community Ties of America. I bid on this, right? Or
Okay.
I'm told, okay, how much is it going to cost for you to perform licensing, certification, and monitoring all our care homes? And I bid, I don't know, this is a procurement, but say I bid 4 million and I get awarded it. So I would assume, and maybe I'm wrong, but this is the numbers you're giving us, that's the procurement amount, which is what we're talking about, procurement. Now, I don't care what you awarded them the first year, the second year, the third year, but if that's the procurement amount, then that's what they should be getting. Yet, they got double. So was there a change order? Was there an addition? Or am I assuming wrong on what you're telling us is the award amount is not the procurement amount?
Yeah, so so I think that there was probably some misunderstanding as to what the actual columns meant. So if you want the total amount of the award, we can
No,
modify
we want the procurement award amount.
Okay.
Procurement,
Okay.
this is what we're
Okay.
talking about, procurement today, not about the overall with the procurement. And so we want to know if you're procuring, if you're going out, you're being awarded to vendors, and then somewhere along the line, you keep the same vendor, you don't go back out again, because maybe another vendor could have provided the other half of the project, but you extend it to the same vendor without
Okay.
doing procurement. I mean, that's the concern we have, or I have anyway, as to, are you being fair to all the people out there, or you like this one vendor and somebody in the department found a way to extend the contract so you can keep the same vendor? I don't know.
I think that we could, I think, by putting in the type of the contract, by clarifying it, going beyond 103D or 103F, that might answer some of these questions, and then basically looking at the final cost of the project.
Okay, thank you.
That would probably clarify. So again, we will provide that, we will revise it and provide that information to the committee.
Yeah, and in the future, if you're not sure as to what we're asking, you guys should ask questions as to, what kind of information you give us. Then it would save us a lot of time.
Okay, thank you.
So in regards to that, though, these multi-year contracts, and you say you're exempted from 103F, under 103F, I'd like to know what criteria you use, because my understanding of when you have these exemptions is usually with other federal or state agencies, and some of these look like private agencies. So can you tell me and send in as additional information your criteria for these multi-year contracts that you have as ongoing? And some of them seem long. So again, as Senator Kim is asking, what are your criteria? Are you evaluating them? Because again, procurement is for the benefit of everyone, especially the state, to look at the best vendor out there to provide the service. So if it's just comfortable going with the same vendor for a long time, and you could get better service if you procured and went out again to an RFP, that is what we're looking at, is what is consistent, what is fair standards across the board, not to be inflexible, but to allow for fairness in your procurement. So if you can tell us the criteria for these multi-year contracts and how you're making that decision, who is making the decision to approve them.
All right. Yes, we will do that.
Okay, Senator, you have. I have some more questions. And so on your procedures, you have, because you didn't give us what your contracts were, type of contracts were, and your flow chart, which we're looking at every department, is from the scoping to the actual execution of the contract. And in your case, if there's multi-year contracts, something in the execution area of why and how you monitor these contracts. But can you give us a different flow chart, because I think there are different rules that apply for when you go out to a competitive bid, IFB, when you go to RFP, when you go out to RFQ, if you have IBIQ, and finally, sole source. I don't see that here, but I'm sure that you have sole source contracts as well. And what are the criteria? And if we can have these contracts and all the contracts that you have reflect that, that would be very helpful as we look at how we look at services versus some of the other departments have goods and primarily construction.
So we'll provide you a process for the 103D goods and services, and we will provide you a 103F
Correct, and can you also include a timeline? So from the time that you scope a project all the way to execution, and if there are multi-year contracts, what do you do post-contract so that, you know, somebody is monitoring so we can see if anybody is monitoring them? Can you give us a time frame for that as well, the whole process?
Okay, yes.
Okay, so I think, and again, we're going to ask you about your criteria for modifications and the consistency across your department. As you say, you've got over 400 procurement officers, and we'll get into that in the training part of your presentation. But any other questions on procedures, process?
Just questions about
Oh,
the part-
Senator De La Cruz.
Okay, wait. You know, on slide 6,
Yes.
can you guys explain or provide the chair some information later about how often the training renewal intervals are for the DOH staff? So whoever has delegated procurement authority, how often are they trained?
Is these just for the procurement delegation for the SPO classes?
Yeah, so anybody who has procurement delegation, how often are they trained?
We generally recommend that for each individual who has procurement delegation, that they do a refresher at least at a minimum 5 years. Every 5 years to retake the classes. And
But-
so
But that's just recommended or required?
it's recommended.
Okay, and so how is that tracked? Is that just all self-monitored?
We actually take a look at the SPO 36. We do keep copies in-house of all of the individuals who have procurement delegation. And basically, if they are reaching that point where, you know, it's been about 5 years since they've taken classes, we do send them a notice saying that, you know, we strongly recommend that you retake these classes for your procurement delegation.
Okay, maybe, I don't know if you're interested in seeing that list or how they
Yeah,
track
so
it.
I think what we're going to ask you to do, some of the other departments have already given us the list of all their procurement officers and what authorities they have. I think that's the Form 36 mentioned earlier. What is their authority? Was it at level 1, level 2, level 3? And when were they trained and authorized to have the delegation? The other issue that came up in some of the other departments is when there's a violation and the procurement officer is involved, is someone monitoring that and talking with them and getting training, but revoking that authorization. Does anybody look at that from your central office or your programs, or is there anybody monitoring that?
We do keep track of all of the procurement violations that happen within the Department of Health. And so, you know, for what we, you know, if there are repeat offenders, then generally what we try to do is basically we will suspend their procurement delegation until they retake those classes. We've done that a couple of times since I've been here at the DOH. But you know, generally we do see all of the procurement violations. We do send them to the state procurement office.
But is it required that all of your procurement officers or within the programs and the divisions report that to? Is it to you, to your office, the CACS office, or who? The deputies, or who is looking at that so that there is consistency? And that violations don't occur, or if they occur, that they get addressed immediately.
All of the programs, sometimes the programs identify the procurement violations. We will sometimes up in the at our central office caps, we will then we do find procurement violations, and then we do notify the programs that a procurement violation has occurred. And so they go through the proper forms. We take a look and make sure that, if this individual has had, previous procurement violations, then we would then, suspend the delegation until such time they retake the classes.
And are you the one that oversees the training for the procurement officers, or your office? Or who does it, the director? Who oversees that?
We monitor those individuals that have procurement delegation. The delegation form is signed off by our director before it goes to SPO. But we here at the CAPS office, we make sure that they've taken the requisite classes needed for that specific delegation.
So why every 5 years though? I mean, does anybody update them if there are statutory changes within the 5-year period?
No, we do not. Basically, we're primarily looking at, when they last took their classes. But that is something that we could definitely do if there has been a substantive change in the procurement code.
Yeah, so this past year, there were, I think, some 3 major changes. Past
Right.
performance, bid protests have time clocks, and there was one more. What was the,
Past perform, those are the two biggies.
yeah, it had 2, and then you had another one. On slide 11, can you elaborate the redundant verification checks?
Right. Yeah. What would happen a lot of times is that basically there would be, like if the, like let's say for instance a purchase order, it would oftentimes pass through 4 or 5 different people in the process for initialing, and then just to see that they saw it. And we basically looked at that and said, well, what are they checking for? And for a lot of those, it was just a matter of because they were the next supervisor in line, and that's why they needed to initial off on it. And so we, it was questionable as to what they were actually looking for. And so those were some of those quality checks or verifications. It was almost like double checking, triple checking.
Yeah, is that all on paper, or is that all digital already?
It's all digital right now. So when you look at our online PO web, we do have a notes column, and that's where all of the either corrections, edits, or questions are seen. And basically what happens is that, we ask the programs who are having to take a look at them, they do initial.
So so even though there could be 5 people, because it's digital, it could be, the process is faster.
Correct, yes, because there's not a piece of paper going back and forth between offices.
Yeah, and is it the same, is every department, or is it just your department that uses that program?
It's only our department, as far as I know, that uses the program. This is something that was developed in-house, and we attached a workflow to it so that basically it goes from the initiator through whatever workflow that's designated by the program, all the way up to the point where we do have a process where it goes to our central offices for encumbrance and then final approval. So all of that.
So
is
all your
electronic.
branches, all your divisions, they all use
Correct.
it? Okay.
Correct.
But
Correct.
it's custom, it's built within your
Correct.
department?
Correct. And it's the same with our Contract Genie system, where it's all, it was something that we developed, and basically it's mandated that all our programs use the Contract Genie to develop their contracts.
And is this for all 10,000 or 11,000 contracts that you have?
It's for the 10,000, it's for the purchase orders. For the contracts, yes.
That for all contracts, small or
Correct.
large?
Correct. And then this also includes all of our neighbor island officers. They're required to use both systems, for processing and for pushing through their documents.
If you could send us just a copy of what it covers, that would be helpful. Your
Well, at
contract
some
fee.
point though, I mean, this is getting into the weeds, but procurement should be looking at all the different departments on which, because
Yeah,
you
it's in
can't
terms
have
of
every
what-
department coming up with their own
Yeah, it should be
digital
standardized.
platform.
There's decentralized.
Yeah,
that's the
but this one
problem.
is even more so because it's decentralized.
Yeah, decentralized.
So,
Can I just ask?
yep, Senator Kim.
So going back to slide 6, Senator De La Cruz's, 474 people in a staff of under 3,000. Is that a lot of people to have delegation of procurement?
474 staff. Well, basically, as long as an individual is performing some type of procurement activity. So part of that 474 may involve some of our office assistants who are part of the procurement activity, whether it be, doing the actual collection of the bids, or, basically calling for small purchases. So basically, we do have, different levels of staff that have specific procurement delegation.
Got it, thank you.
So in that regard, can you send us a list of all your procurement officers by division or branch, and what their authority is? Like, is it, level 1 or level 2 or level 3? And have they been trained accordingly for that level?
Yes, we can provide that to you, yes.
Thank you.
I have a question on slide 16.
Senator Dela Cruz, slide 16.
So, does the department have a general idea of how often and to what degree the recommendation to consult with the AG is utilized?
This is primarily for the bid protests. As you notice, we've only had 2 protests within the last 3 years, and basically those were pretty much resolved, with it, without having the, to consult with the Attorney General. Basically, if there are protests and, it's for, we always, one of the first things we do is, we always check to see that the programs, that they do work with their Deputy Attorney General.
So what do you attribute that to, though? Why do you think you only have 2?
I believe that, I think part of it has.
What is that?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I guess, it's kind of hard for me to say.
This is the part you can brag.
We're good. No, yeah. Well, I think that, some of our process, we have enough, I guess, processes in place such that, that we don't have, too many individuals who protest. We do encourage, we do have training materials, we do provide training, we do make sure that the programs follow the solicitation process. And, the other thing is that, one of the problems that I know that, has come up is that, writing up the specifications. We oftentimes, make sure that they know what it is that they're buying. Sometimes if there are, certain types of conditions that need to be put in, we do encourage our programs to consult with the Deputy Attorney General before the solicitation goes out. And, with all of these, things in place, a lot of programs do this. And so I think that contributes to some of the, contributes to the reason why we don't have as many protests.
Yeah. But, going back to what was asked earlier, sometimes there are contracts that are continually renewed. Is that, you think that has anything to do with that, or is it just strictly on what you answered earlier?
Yeah, I think that it kind of goes back to making sure that our solicitation process is sound. I think that to me it's you either prepare really well at the front end, or you might run the risk of having to redo things on the back end. And so we do always encourage our programs to make sure that when they're going out for procurement, that one, they have a sound proposal, or they have sound specifications. So we always encourage that. I know that some programs they're in a hurry and they try to do it fast, but we always let them know that it's really important that you put what you need, what your requirements and your specifications are on the front end, because then that prevents having protests on the back end. Because I think it was mentioned in previous presentations, when you have protests, that does delay delay the project. Yeah. And again, that time is money, right? Like everybody's been saying. And so if you do your homework at the front end, I think that prevents a lot of protests and other things that come at the back end if you don't do it properly.
Okay, I have a question on slide 17.
Mhm.
Can you elaborate on what you mean by current small purchase thresholds not addressing procurement risks?
Okay. Yeah, one of the things that we're finding out is that, a lot of times, the thresholds are just that, and a lot of people will just, latch on to the fact that, well, it's under $100,000, so I don't have to, do a contract, or I don't have to, there's some things that, they may or may not want to do to, I guess, to effect that procurement. One of the things that we're finding out is that, just because a purchase is under $100,000 doesn't mean that, you don't need to do maybe some type of contract. And, that's what we try to get to the programs, especially when it comes to goods and services. Now, if you're buying a basic computer and so forth, the risk of something, the risk of something happening, or the remedies are there should, something happen to that computer. You have warranties and so forth.
That's interesting.
Now, yeah, right. But now but then under $100,000, sometimes we may have a certain type of service. Unfortunately, we've had cases where, we may have to get our roof, we have roof leaks. And so, those are sometimes under $100,000. Now, that comes with a lot of risk. There's liability involved. And so even if it is under that $100,000, we do ask that you do a contract, because the contract provides further protection.
But meaning you're going out through the RFP process?
Correct. So in case, if the roof falls in, so there's that liability. So that's kind of what we're looking at,
Okay, so that's interesting. So you guys always err on the side of caution regarding small purchases.
So, we try to get the programs to look beyond the thresholds. We're saying you got to look at what it is that you're purchasing. What is the risk? Do you have remedies? Is there a liability involved?
So do they all have to go through you then? So for instance, if I'm one of your divisions and I'm wanting to procure or select someone or contract someone below 100,000, I would have to double check with you first.
No, we provide training materials for that. And right now, internally within the Department of Health, we do have a internal guideline, which we're looking at. Any purchases between $50,000 and $100,000. We encourage them to take a look and determine.
Okay, so you're just trying to do it culturally within the department. So there's no real process to just have a.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting.
But I think that, for us, trying to take a look at that risk, because again, a lot of people will just look at the threshold and they'll say, okay, threshold, I'll just do a PO. But, again, we're trying to get the programs to look at what it is that they're buying and what is the implication should there be non-performance, should something happen, if it's a good or service, if it should break, and those kinds of things. So we're looking at that to help them determine, maybe I do need a contract. Or, like a lot of times there are service agreements. We may want to take a look at those service agreements and have that hold some weight, so that, we're not stuck, not having an item or, having, some type of liability issue involved with that procurement.
So what about the competition of vendors across departments? What are you guys?
It's happening a lot in the 103F, for our purchase of services. We have, we have a Department of Human Services, or even within the Department of Health, we have, we have different programs that basically look to see, that have the same vendors providing a service. And oftentimes what will happen is that some of those vendors, frankly, there may be some services that they may not want to provide. And so, they may pick and choose what it is that they want. And then also too, if we're vying for the same service that DHS is looking at, oftentimes these vendors are in the driver's seat. They may say, well, DHS is paying me more than DOH, and they may not want to bid on our procurement. And so we run into this problem where, we have, one vendor providing different services to different either agencies or entities within DOH. And yet, they can, a lot of times they're in the driver's seat because they can pick and choose a lot of times which service they want to do. Sometimes the service, that they provide maybe, if the service is a little bit more high risk, they may not want to take that, and they may go, they may not bid for it. So we're always, trying to see if there's a way that we can do some kind of economies of scale where, it's like, okay, maybe we can partner up and say, oh, we have a vendor. Can you, we have different services from different,
So that would force them to have to provide the service you need when you have the scale.
Correct, right. So, we're in competition a lot of times for those types of services.
In that regard, I understand that that's what BHA was doing. There was an effort made, and I think they had a way that you would be outcome-driven, that you would have all of the resources for those kinds of services, so you don't have duplication, so you don't compete with each other, so you do actually the state is in the driver's seat rather than the vendors. And I understand that there was an RFP to go out to do such a system. And I don't know if the director can answer that, but I do want a report on where that is, because that is exactly what you're mentioning is the problem within DOH as well as across sister agencies that have the same kinds of services that you're acquiring, so that we can serve the public better.
Yeah, okay, we will do that.
Yeah. And I just want to go back, Senator.
Go ahead.
I just want to go back to these small contracts, the small purchases. On the one hand, I like what you're saying, that you're going to have criteria for when you do small purchases, and that you're sure that you don't go to contract. That you go to contract when you need to, and I'd like a copy of those criteria that you do give to your units, and also any internal controls that you have, so that we've heard that there are small purchases. It's used as a mechanism to have a number of small purchases within a year to the same vendor. And I'd like you to let us know if under these contracts, small purchases, we asked for those over 100,000, but now with the discussion on your criteria and being able to ensure that we don't have this kind of parceling, I'd like to see all your small contracts as well that are to the same vendor within the same year.
Okay, we can provide that.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, I just had a quick question on slide 18. The issues you have regarding certificates of insurance.
Yeah. For some of our programs, we do require certificates of insurance, whether it be professional or even automobile insurance. And one of the problems that we have is the fact that depending on your insurance agent or how I guess how they prepare that document, that insurance document, there's specific wording that's required, and we do follow the comptroller's memo on what those requirements are, as far as the phrases that are required in those particular boxes. And oftentimes what happens is that the vendor who's trying to get that certificate of insurance, the document itself is doesn't have that information, and even sometimes the policy dates are not correct. And so we do run into problems with that certificate of insurance, and a lot of times it is needed for some of the procurement that we do. Yeah, but it does cost the vendor money.
But we do want our vendors to have insurance. I mean, that protects the state. Right. So what are you suggesting? No,
you end up delaying the contract then until you get it.
Yeah.
Sounds like.
Right. Yeah. So what happens is that if we don't get it, we can't start the contract. And oftentimes what happens is that, especially if vendors, insurance companies, for whatever reason, if we need to have a specific date and that date has come and gone, they will not backdate certificates or policies. And oftentimes, anytime that there's changes that need to be made, the vendor needs to bear the costs of whatever the insurance company is charging them for those changes. But again, it does delay our ability to start that, to get that good or get that service.
On the one hand, it's good to have the service. On the other hand, it's good to have the insurance. So what are
Right,
you
right,
suggesting?
right.
Suggesting that what if you do have a waiver? What I don't know what you're suggesting, but
I
then
think
then something happens and there's no insurance. So how are you suggesting to address that problem?
I think that maybe, how the certificate of insurance is used, or what specific, I think it needs to be.
Or give it some
more
thought.
clear.
Just maybe we should
Yeah.
just
Think
give it some
about it
thought.
and we'll.
That way you're not having to scramble trying to
Not
come
right
up with.
now. Yeah,
You
we
should
don't
just.
need you to answer that right now.
Yeah. But I guess, those are some of the challenges that we do have. Again, that's kind of a, especially because we have a lot of purchase of service, for our providers. And, they do require the professional insurance, and, if the dates aren't right, or if, then it does delay our ability to start that, start that service. So it does create a problem for us.
So on this slide, you talk again about retraining.
Right. And, like I mentioned, there is really no set time limit on the procurement delegation. But as I mentioned previously, we do encourage refresher training for those that haven't taken classes within the 5
Okay,
years.
so but do you have a rate of compliance? Do you know how many people even, because it's recommended, do you still get 100%, or is it 10% that don't do it? Or do you know what that rate is?
Yeah, for the most part, we do have compliance. There's still some that, don't take it. And so we, again, we try to encourage everybody, to take the refresher training. Sometimes I wish, sometimes they would, if there was some kind of more solid requirement that we could.
So if it was in law, then you would appreciate that.
That very much help, because as you know, we do have, 470, some odd people that do have procurement delegation. And so, we want to make sure that, they're up to date on their training. And, like you mentioned, there are new policies that have come out. And so we want to make sure that, that all gets, that they're aware of all of that also.
Yeah, so on the next slide, slide 19.
Could I just make one comment on that? So are you saying that your department can't require that of the 400 some odd
They just
procurement
recommend.
officers? You need a law to do that?
Well,
I mean, you can't just do the training and require at least the higher levels.
Well, that might be above, is that above your pay grade or no?
Is that the director's call? That's the director's call. So maybe the director can answer that when we come back to her.
Yeah.
Okay, the next slide then, 19, because it's all related to the same thing. How does the department track the procurement delegation and monitor whether the training has been completed? But you said you have a database.
Right, we do keep track. We do have all of the the procurement delegation forms, the SPO 36.
But nothing, but going back to what was discussed, there's nothing required, and it's either in law or it has to happen at the director
Well,
level.
for the procurement delegation itself, before they can do any kind of procurement activity, they have to take that initial set of courses to have that procurement delegation. I guess the issue is that, some of these individuals, after 5 years, they still have procurement delegation, but, we always recommend that they take some kind of
Yeah.
refresher course. And so that's where
What kind of communication do you guys get from the SPO? So for instance, like what we talked about earlier, there've been changes to the procurement law. Is there an update from the procurement office to all of you saying these have been the changes?
Right, they do send that to us, and then we do turn around, and then we do let the programs know that, there have been changes to some of the existing laws, or there are new laws that have been put in place.
Okay, so what kind of interaction do you normally get with the SPO, or how often?
We're constantly in communication with SPO. Bonnie Kahukui and her staff, we talk to them every once in a while. And so, we do ask for advice. Oftentimes, when new directives or when new, changes to the policies come out, if we have any questions, we do, we contact them. So we do have some open communication. Most of the time it is via email.
I think so. It's all contracts, I think, yeah. Oh, yeah, I think so.
So how are you guys going to implement the past performance requirement now?
It might
I
be-
don't
it
think
might
it's
be- oh, no,
required.
it might
It's
be
not, huh?
construction, yeah.
Yeah, is it only construction?
Yeah, but we should
Except
have-
all airports contracts.
Yeah, and airports.
No, that's only on the protest, it's
No,
not on
it
the
was under past performance. too.
past performance too.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, it's construction.
Do you track past performance?
Not, we don't, I would need to check with the programs to see if they do that, but we don't do that centrally.
Okay, so when you are selecting a contractor, is past performance at all in the conversation or not really?
It is one area that, the programs may look at, but I don't know if that's
Oh,
a criteria for the actual selection. Again, I can go back to the programs to see whether or not they are actually using that as a criteria for the final selection.
okay.
But when you do the evaluation, if it's a procurement, you're looking at responsive and responsible bidders, right? Even in your 103F. I mean,
Right.
you're just not just
We
giving
make
it
sure,
to
we
anybody.
make sure that they adequately address all of the requirements of that solicitation. And, that's one of the things that, they are required to do.
And it seems you don't really evaluate the contracts, especially these multi-year contracts. And if you don't have a policy, if you have a policy, I'd like us to hear that, because especially in these long-term contracts, or some of these that seem like it goes on and on, how do
We
you
can address that.
evaluate that? Going back to Senator De La Cruz's question, we can't just be having these multi-year contracts and just continuing on without looking at performance and whether we're getting what we're paying for.
Okay.
But
Yes.
it sounds like because you have so many divisions and branches, even, so you have one where you talked about the culture of small purchases, that you feel as though across the board, everyone is going to be cautious because that's been ingrained, right? Sounds
Right.
like. But in regards to this past performance, that has not been something culturally that everyone has been practicing. So it could be, because you have so many branches and divisions, it could be occurring, but you don't know because
Right.
you got so many different, obviously,
Right.
what is that? 1/6 of your of your department has procurement delegation.
So I guess that's the point, right? Because you've got so many divisions and branches. How do you have consistent application of the law to all of them, and to make sure, just not kind of relying that each department and each division or branch knows, because you're not checking on whether they're trained annually or being renewed. So how can you do that, and who's in charge, who's responsible to making sure that they do that? Is that your office?
Yeah, and so basically, we're constantly, monitoring. One of the things that we do for our office is that, we do provide training. We try to do it at least once or twice a year. We also have a quarterly newsletter that comes out from our office, and we basically, inform it goes to all of DOH, and it informs the programs of any changes, especially in the area of procurement, like you mentioned, any changes to policy, process. So we do have that mechanism that we use in order to get information out to everyone at DOH.
I guess what you're doing is great, and the annual update is great, but do you keep track of who comes to your, do all 454 come to your update? And if they don't, I mean, are they not, I mean, should their authorization be revoked, or, what can you do so that you can get more consistent handling of contracts and grants, because you have so many spread out across, 4,000 employees or whatever, 3,000 employees, that
So,
you
you
really
know,
want
yeah.
to have some kind of standards for your whole department. So what can you do about that?
Great. So, one of the things that I mentioned previously is that we do have an intranet site for our procurement as well as the other areas within the Administrative Services Office. And basically, in addition to the training, we do tape our training. And so we always remind individuals that, if you were not able to attend the training, we do have all of those online. And again, to get the word out, we do have our newsletter that we send out to everybody in DOH. It's a one-pager because we realize that, anything over a page, probably nobody's going to read it. So we try to keep it within the page. If there are documents that they need, if there's memos and, other items that they may need to see, we have links within our newsletter so that they can go, click on it and then go to that memo that, explains further in detail what the change in the policy is or the process.
So do you keep track of who comes to that annual training so that you
Right, we
at
do.
least know that your employees who have authorization are attending those so they know what they're doing?
Yeah, we try to, we do keep, now that we do everything on Microsoft Teams, we do have a roster of who attends those training sessions.
And
The only
if-
thing we don't have is that, who accesses the, a lot of people cannot attend for whatever reason, but we don't have we don't know if they go in after and then view, what we've already reported for that training session.
So can you go back to whoever is the CPO of that division and say, so-and-so and so-and-so haven't attended, so that there's consistency, because you have so many and so many
Right.
contracts, that I would think that you'd be, and the director and deputies would be concerned about that. So
That's
that,
definitely
you
something that-
actually have some way of monitoring who gets trained and who knows what. And, authorized to do, to do procurement or contracting because they know what they're doing.
Right. That's definitely something that we can create here. But, again, we're trying different mechanisms of trying to get the word out or trying to make sure that everybody gets the information.
I think you have also, it's suggested that you have memoranda of agreement with various organizations. What is that, and is that being used as contracts, or are you actually doing contracts with your MOA?
What types of MOA,
Yeah, so I guess you have
specific-
memoranda of agreement with various agencies. I don't know if these are the multi-year ones or indefinite ones, but how do you use that? It's like
Yeah,
between
generally, our
agencies, I don't know if they're private or public or nonprofit or just, with the university. What are those, or who handles those? Or is it division or branch by branch?
Yeah, it's mostly at the branch level, but, generally those MOAs, are between, between other state entities. Yeah.
But those aren't in lieu of contracts, right? I mean, the MOA says this is how we're gonna operate together, and then you have a contract, whether it's multi-year, you know how much that amount is, and you know how long it's gonna run for. Is that correct?
I would have to check and see. I don't know what MOAs you're referring to. We'd have to take a look at those.
Okay,
Can get back
Yeah.
to you.
okay, that's good, thank you. Any other questions, members? Yeah, Senator Kim? Okay, let's see. Oh, again, going back to the rate schedule that Senator Kidani asked about, can you give us some criteria on how you determine the rates, whether it's within your divisions or within your branches? Is there some criteria they use so that we don't have different rates for different divisions within your department? Do you have some central rate schedule for various services? And if so, can we see that?
We can take a look at that, and then we will get back to you on those. We'll work with the deputies on that one.
I think, any other questions, members?
No.
Okay, I think, unless you want to go over any recommendations that you might have for the challenges that are listed here in the slides, I think we went over them, but you may have recommendations, the slides 17 through 18, 19, recommendations.
Well, they talked about the group purchasing,
The group purchasing, yeah.
working with other departments.
Yeah, and within the department. So I would like that, what you're doing on that, that's the group purchasing, the looking at the, master kind of agreement on, so that you folks can be coordinating before you go out to bid for various services and not be competing with each other instead of.
Well, they're saying
other
they
things.
can't get services because the vendor is saying that they don't want to do it.
Yeah, but that's
But
because
when
they're
they
separate.
hooey with everybody else,
so that's
now
what
the
they're-
vendor
So that
has to
they-
comply
they
because
hooey.
the state has the upper hand in that situation.
Yeah,
Is that
so-
right?
Yeah, so basically right now, a lot of the vendors are in the driver's seat, and so we'd like to have more control. We'd like to be in the driver's seat.
So that's what I think that was being worked on. So if you can go back and check on that, where you folks are in the driver's seat because you have the
But they
resources.
can't do it alone. She's saying they need other departments, right?
Yeah, we work, yeah, because there's a lot of,
Oh, there is oh.
yeah, there are other agencies that are vying for the same, services and or vendors, so.
I think you have a number of units within your department that also vie with each other. So I think starting there and working with DHS, because I think both of the departments and within the departments vie against each other. So if you can look at that, I do understand that there has been a draft document that probably the director is working on. But if you can look at that, that would be something to address that
Except
challenge.
in some cases, though, they might want to work through DAGs, right? So if every
Depends on
department,
what it
yeah,
is.
depends on what it is.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how that's going to look
Yeah.
like,
So
but
if we can get a report on that as well.
Okay, yes.
What about these other recommendations you have? I guess we covered it, the training, the delegation of authority. I think we covered that, the 497 staff. So again, we're asking you for a list of that, and you probably have that, the Form 36. Give
Right,
us
yes.
what they have so that you have an inventory that you can share with us on all the levels. Position level 1, 2, 3, who has authority for what and what they've been trained for. And when.
Okay.
I think no other questions? Okay, there being no other questions, Director Char, would you like to make some closing remarks? Or any of your deputies? If you're there? Okay, well, if not, we will, no other business, I'm going to adjourn this briefing.